Welcome back to Normal Island. I'm Curtis Daly, and I'm joined by hero and good friend of the show, Kevin Logan. Kevin, how are we?
I'm very well. I'm also glad that I'm a hero. I've been put up in the world. That's fantastic. Thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, and I'm sorry I didn't tell you that before. I've always thought you were a hero, but I'm only just saying it now.
Well, I'm glad you
Cowardice from my
did.
end.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm flattered, and I'm a little bit turned on, if I'm honest now.
Honestly, I think it might be the t-shirt though, not me. Come on, it's just a
It
t-shirt.
is that T-shirt is amazing, and I definitely want to steal it from you.
You have to come around my house then and do that first, aren't you?
See, it's always homoerotic, and I love it.
I'm always innocent, and you always turn that way.
You're the one who literally just invited me round your house. Come on
We're
now,
friends. We're friends.
we're friends.
Anyway, it's going to be a really good show tonight. It's packed out. We've got 4 stories, so we're going to have to roll through it fairly quickly, but we're not going to leave any context out. Coming up on tonight's show, we've got a Birmingham bin men turn down terrible pay deal. Lawyer eviscerates Zionist talking points. The UK court rules trans women are not women. And Liz Truss wants to start a free speech network. As always, remember to like the stream. And if you're not a subscriber, then please hit that button. Help us reach our goal of 40,000 subscribers by the end of the year. You know what? We've had a pretty successful growth, I think, in the last month or so. And it's really encouraging to see. We will also be getting to your comments at the end. So please make sure you are busy in the chat. On with the show and on with our first story. Birmingham has been in a state of crisis as severe lack of funding to the council has left vital public services unable to function in their basic capacity. Adding pressure are continued strikes from bin men as they recently rejected a deal from the city council. A strike by bin workers in Birmingham is set to continue after the latest pay offer by the city council was overwhelmingly rejected. It follows a month-long standoff between members of the Unite Union and the Labour-run authority as bin bags and fly-tipped rubbish have piled high on the streets. Now, of course, we've had voices from the usual suspects attacking the workers. This is failed Tory candidate on multiple occasions, might I add, Sebastian Payne.
Well, it's all starting to look a bit 1970s at the moment. If you can think back of the rubbish bags piled high in Leicester Square, which kind of was symbolic of the winter of discontent, which then obviously created a lot of problems for the Labour government. Birmingham now has 23,000 tonnes of uncollected rubbish, and Angela Rayner has called in Army planners to try and help them solve it. We'll see if they have to pull in the Army full time. But the Telegraph tomorrow warns that this may well spread, as we saw in the late 1970s, to teachers, NHS workers, civil servants, university staff could all walk out over pay conditions.
Many of whom had big pay rises recently under the Labour government, to be fair, did they not? And obviously people want to start to lower wage inflation to bring down overall inflation. So this is part of the
I think...
Of course, the corporate media are trying to compare this to the 70s. But the problems of Birmingham began because of Tory austerity. And it was also nice of the host to say that workers have had a big pay rise. I mean, I don't know what planet she's living on. We have another clip. This time it's former Labour Minister Caroline Flint.
I just don't see how, to be honest, Unite the Union think this is going to do them any favours with the public. From what I understand, the councillors at Birmingham have agreed a plan to reduce some of the services, some of the jobs they're redesigning. They're offering all the workforce a chance to retrain. Nobody's going to lose their job. And I really think, in the interests of public health, in the interests of actually recognising the reality, I think this is a bad move by Unite the Union.
It's also worth noting that Angela Rayner called for Unite to accept the deal.
Well, the bin situation in Birmingham is appalling, and I urge Unite to get round the table, and they can't be blocking lorries. The lorries that are going out, there is an agreement to make sure that those bins are collected, despite the dispute, have to be allowed to do their job. And I'm determined to work with the local leaders. I stand ready to support them. It is a local dispute, and the leaders are in control of that. But if they need me as Secretary of State, I won't hesitate to be on hand, and will support them in that endeavour. But I urge Unite to get round the table and to get the deal.
Now, why won't the workers accept the deal? Might it be because the deal is a pay cut? The offer does not protect from £8,000 pay cuts. Striking Birmingham bin workers have today rejected the council's totally inadequate offer. Hundreds of workers, members of Unite, the UK's leading union, voted overwhelmingly to reject the deal, which still includes substantial pay cuts for workers. The offer also did not address potential pay cuts for 200 drivers. A deal in which the city council thinks this is adequate. A deal that they won't protect an £8,000 pay cut. Kevin, as someone who is a Birmingham resident, meaning, you're an excellent person to be speaking on this, apparently bin workers should just accept a pay cut.
Yeah, I don't even know where to start. Sebastian Payne, a person who has not been to the city and couldn't give a damn about it, should shut his mouth. Angela Rayner is a deputy prime minister and working class person, is a class traitor and should also shut up. A person threatening to bring the army in against workers. I mean, does she want to be remembered as a genuinely evil person? I don't know. Yeah, the council have played this about as poorly as they possibly can. And it does actually call into question whether the council are in control or not. Because for those who don't know, the wider context of this is that in the wake of massive gender-based pay complaints, which are absolutely legitimate because women were being underpaid by the city council for decades and decades, even going back to before we were technically existed as Birmingham City Council. It was West Midlands, and then before that was Warwickshire County Council. That's how far back it goes. The council is billions of pounds in debt. And so we have a series of nationally appointed administrators who essentially are running the day-to-day policy. The overall overarching policy is being set by council leaders like John Cotton, the leader of the council, but the administrators are the ones essentially trying to enforce austerity on the city. Even after we've had massive increases in council tax, they're not even providing basic services. And this will go beyond just the evisceration of so many people in waste disposal industries, because they're literally reevaluating every position that the city council employs. Although, of course, the councillors themselves just voted through a 5% pay rise. So, that's an interesting little juxtaposition. Where they found that money from, I don't know. The initial problem was with what's called WRCOs, which is Waste and Recycling Coordination Officers, which we are being told was not necessary as a position. So why they ever existed, I'm not entirely sure. And like you said, this is now spread to the drivers of the vehicles themselves. The council are looking for any way to try and undermine and eviscerate their own workforce, which will lead to worse services overall. It's not just that we'll have fewer people doing it, it's that people won't want to do it. They've been undermined consistently. The police are now using strongman tactics against trade union officials on the picket line, and they're threatening to use the army against them. This is dystopian. It genuinely is. And the council they seem intent on trying to appeal to nobody. They've taken the Labour Council have taken their comms directives, it seems, from the National Party, in that they seem to want to do everything they possibly can to undermine their own supporters in the city.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think I actually want to first ask you, because obviously you are from Birmingham, you live there. What's it like on the ground there? Let me ask you that first.
It's not great, although it has slightly improved in recent days. There have been some collections, albeit it's scabbed labour, so I don't even want to say it has improved. But there has been some collection in some places. But as we've seen, it's gone from 17,000 to 21,000, and now 23,000 is the number in thousands of tonnes of waste that's on the city. The rat problem is significant and increasing, and even worse than that, the council have decided to do the worst thing possible in terms of combating the rodent infestations, because previously the council had extermination teams and pest control teams that would deal with this for free, regardless of whether you were a public tenant or a private tenant, or indeed homeowner. You could ring the council up and they would come round and deal with it, because it's a health and safety issue for everybody in the local area, of course, because rats don't just stay in one place, they go everywhere, and they're a public health complaint or a problem. Whereas now the council are charging £24.60 for every single household that wants a person to come round and deal with their pest control problems. So at a time when we're having a booming rat problem, where we've had rats caught that were 2 feet in length, the size of a cat, the council are now charging people to deal with that problem.
Isn't the major problem here
Victorian healthcare issue bombshell waiting to happen on Labour's watch? It's a Labour council and a Labour government enforcing a Victorian austerity upon the city.
But isn't the bigger problem here not the council itself? Obviously, the council aren't making the best decisions, but really it's down to the fact that obviously we've had 14 years of Tory austerity.
Yeah.
And the Labour Party are continuing it.
Yes.
Essentially, and this isn't necessarily defending the council, given that you told me that they've given some council workers pay increases, while they won't they're proposing pay cuts for bin workers. But at the end of the day, the council has a budget, and that's been set by the national government. Now, the Labour Party could come in and say, we're going to make a clean break from the Conservatives, who have basically destroyed local councils by underfunding, and we're going to put a huge cash injection to alleviate the problems.
Yeah.
What they're doing is basically, we're going to take the exact same austerity measures as the Conservatives, and what we're also going to do is offer pay cuts to union workers and then blame them for not doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So rhetorically, it's the same as the Conservatives as well. They're not even saying, "Oh, we stand with the workers. We want better deal for the workers," but also continuing austerity. It's like they've now adopted the exact same tactics, the exact same rhetoric from the Conservatives, especially talking about bringing in the army, which is the biggest form of unionisation scabbing practices that exist.
Yeah, absolutely. They've taken the same policies and route as the Tory party because they are the Tory party.
Yeah,
now.
well, of course, yeah.
That's all they are at this point. I understand from a practical point of view why they don't want to just give wads of cash to individual administration, to individual councils across the country, because that's unfair on other parts of the country that have not had this problem and not had to deal with it. Although I would argue, as a socialist Labour Party, they should probably just be generally increasing the block grants given to local city and county councils. But even if they don't want to do that, what they could have done is offered a regular loan to the city in order that the massive pay complaint issue that we've had over the last decade could have been staggered over the course of time, rather than having the malfeasance, the governmental malfeasance of decades of previous, mainly Labour but occasionally Tory and Tory Lib Dem coalition councils that have built up for this city being dropped on us like an individual bombshell in the course of one fiscal term. What you could have had is that staggered over 10 or 20 years with a government loan, and that wouldn't have cost the taxpayer anything in the long run. Or sort of say the national taxpayer in the long run. And the Birmingham taxpayer wouldn't have had to deal with these just ridiculous, backward, archaic measures. It sort of leads me to the idea that I've expressed before, that Sharon Graham, the leader of the Unite Union that are currently the head of this strike, why are you affiliated to the Labour Party? You've literally got John Cotton, the leader of the council, who's technically a Unite member, currently trying to undermine you. You have a Labour national government, which is threatening the sword of Damocles of bringing in the army to override your workers. Why are you affiliated to them? Why are you paying money to a party that is hurting you and your members? You are paying to remain in an abusive relationship, and it should stop.
I think they still believe that they have a seat at the table, and they feel like, if we were to stop our fund, they don't. They absolutely don't. But that's what they think, right?
Yeah.
If we stop our funding, we disaffiliate. They think, one, that will mean Labour will be even harsher on unions because they don't need to appease them. Something I reject, by the way, because they're clearly they're antagonistic to unions anyway.
Yes.
So they're just taking free money. And the second idea behind it is, if we disaffiliate from the party, then we're going to have no say. And again, I push back on that because where are we at the moment? They have no say and they're being bullied by the Labour Party. I think they probably would actually have far better political capital backing another party at this point and saying, just like how we say, don't vote for the Labour Party because we need to sort of punish them at the ballot box. It's not like, for me, who I voted Green, it's not that I think they're going to get into government, but I want them to have more seats and the Labour Party have less seats, and they might go, oh, fuck, we're losing votes to the left. Maybe if the unions backed a smaller party and threaten them financially, actually use the backbone with all the members and the money they have, but they're not doing that.
Well, exactly. What voice do they have right now? The party they have funded is in the government of both the Birmingham City Council and nationally. You have a West Midlands mayoralty as well under Labour, and you can't get anything. You're literally, you can't get any movement. They are trying not to just give your members a pay rise. They want the pay you've already negotiated with them years ago. They don't want you to just instantly fire people. And by the way, the quote you had there from the council, that Seb Payne had from the council about them not losing jobs, is not true. They are starting a redundancy negotiations, and notices have been sent out to hundreds of members so far. So they're just trying to sack people. They actually are trying to. They're not. It's not a matter of they're going to retrain people, whatever the hell that even means. There are no jobs for them to go to.
Complete euphemism.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. The idea that the Labour Party represents Labour in any way whatsoever is a ridiculous, disgusting joke.
Let the party die.
Basically,
the party die.
Yeah, well, it's not even that they're just dying; they're killing themselves.
True.
You've seen through things like the getting rid of the pensioner tax credit, also winter fuel payments, or the attacking of disability benefits, or indeed the way they're dealing with the trade unions, not just in Birmingham, but in Birmingham specifically to this story. They're eviscerating their own support. Why would anyone vote for the Labour Party now? If you want to vote for the Tory Party, Reform are right there.
Well, if you guys watching want to help, you can, as there is a bin strike fund.
Yes.
So the details, if you get them up now, are on screen. So if you want to support them, you can do so. If we can bring up that graphic, there we go. Yeah. So this is the bank account details for the Unite branch. That the money should then go to this this fund. I think it's what we should all do and encourage, because obviously the government and the council's going to bail them out. I mean, the union leadership is, I would say, lacking. So if any of you do want to contribute, then the details are there. But I think let's move on and move on to our second story. Excuse me. Frank Magennis, a lawyer who has chosen to represent Hamas, appeared on Talk TV and LBC, and frankly, he completely destroyed Zionist talking points.
Have you decided to take this case?
What do you mean?
Has it been your decision to take this case? You've been instructed and you've decided to take the case?
Who else would have decided to take the case? I don't understand. Of course I decide what cases I take.
How do you sleep at night?
You have just asked me, how do I sleep at night? And what you're trying to do by saying that is you're trying to fix me, you're trying to associate me with my client. There is a very well-established
representing them, Frank. You're representing them. You've decided to this is a conversation. I'm not going to be told whether I can talk or not talk. You've decided to represent them.
So you've invited me to talk over me because you're afraid of what I have to say, is that right?
I'm not afraid of what you have to say.
Let's talk about how there's a crisis of Zionism because it's committing a genocide. Do you agree that Israel's committing a genocide?
No.
So if I'm right that it is, and if South Africa's government is right that it is, that would make you a genocide denier, would it? Is that what you are? You deny genocide, do you?
To you alleging that I'm a genocide denier, which I would argue is defamatory.
You literally denied the genocide. It's not defamatory, mate.
I'm not denying it. I'm not denying it. It is not a genocide.
Yeah, so if I said if I'm right...
It is factually not. Well, you're tying yourself up in knots. What I would wonder is how you can argue that Hamas isn't a terrorist organisation if the definition is so broad.
Well, by that logic, Israel's a terrorist organisation. Do you agree?
No.
It gets better. So Peter Cardwell, who's the host on Talk TV, then claims that multiple governments who have accused Israel of genocide are simply wrong.
No solution for the Palestinian question except through jihad. That is what Hamas believe, and I would not represent an organisation that believed that, and you have chosen to.
Where's that quote from?
The first one is from the Hamas Charter Article 7, and the second one is from Hamas Charter Article 13.
Which year was that charter passed in?
I don't have it in front of me.
You don't know, do you? You're out of your depth, aren't you?
Out of my depth, right. So presumably it has something to do with what you believe.
Do you not understand how the legal system works?
Yes,
I'm going to say that the IDF is a terrorist organisation. She could do that if she wanted. She literally could. Why shouldn't she? They're doing a genocide.
Why shouldn't she? It's not a genocide. It is factually not a genocide.
Well, the South African government, the Irish government, the Spanish government, the Belgian government disagrees with you. Oh, you know better than them, do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're wrong. They're wrong.
All right. Who asked you? What do you know? You obviously don't. You're out of your depth. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. I think that, the phenomenal submissions that we saw in the South African genocide case are far more persuasive than any of the sort of ridiculous talking points that you're propagating here. It's okay, mate. You're allowed to not know what you're talking about, but why don't you just admit it to your viewers? You don't know what you're talking about. You're under your depth. Everyone can see it.
Frank, thanks for your help. That's Frank.
Thanks for your help. Cut it off. That was so cathartic to watch. It's brilliant, and he completely made the host look like a complete mug. But Frank also then appeared on LBC with Tom Swarbrick.
You say it's right to do it pro bono because?
I don't want to talk about the question of why I've done it pro bono. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about the application, please.
Okay. So I'm going to ask the question one more time, and you can choose not to answer it if you don't want to. Why have you chosen to represent a terror group?
I find your question extremely unprofessional.
Why?
I'm here to talk about a serious application. It's clear that the organisation I represent, Hamas, wanted to make an application under Section 4 of the Terrorism Act. They required legal assistance to do it, so I accepted a brief.
Are you being paid for it?
No, I've already told you, if you were listening, that I'm doing it pro bono.
The reason why I love his disdain and attitude is because, of course, the entire framing. Look, I chose this story not to discuss about the lawyer himself and why he decided to represent Hamas. They are a terrorist organization. That is just a fact, right? But what I'm interested in is the entire narrative has been extremely pro-Israel, and we need voices to push back on it. You know, we need people to say that Israel is also a terrorist state. Kevin, I want to get your response to these series of interviews. Hilarious they are, but I got to hear your response.
I'm so glad that this has happened. Like you say, just to hear a man with the level of Chad energy that's going on. It could only have been bettered if he'd been wearing cat ears or something, just to equally mock them even further. No, it's amazing, amazing that he's pushing back on narratives in a way that you just don't hear from anyone. None of the sensibles, none of the adults in the room ever have anything to say other than broad, generic, like, oh, maybe bombing children shouldn't happen or something. But that's about as much as you're ever going to get. And again, the absolute denial of genocide is not a thing remotely that it just exists on GBBs. That'll be on the BBC and everywhere else. It's ridiculous. The guy actually, and like his case, I don't think he has one, frankly, in a general sense.
Oh, we've lost your audio there. Is that Tom Swarbrick trying to cut your internet connection off? It's not muted, is it? Do you want to... Maybe... Oh, God, is it because you dropped your camera earlier? MI5. Do us a favour. Do you want to hop out and come back in? Yeah. One of these days, we are going to get through a show where there's literally no tech issues. Not one. But that doesn't seem to be happening. I'll tell you what, let us know in the comments what you thought about the lawyer. I do want to respond to one comment. Let me find you. Jane Puryear. They are not a terrorist organisation. So when I say they are a terrorist organisation, I'm not adding a necessarily moralistic argument here, even though I don't defend what Hamas did on the 7th of October. They are technically, in terms of the way the IRA were. Now, that doesn't then mean... Oh, we got you back. I'll be back in a second. That doesn't mean that the IRA didn't have reasonable anger towards the British state, but also the term one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, that also doesn't negate the fact that Hamas are technically terrorists. But again, it doesn't mean that the cause behind it isn't just. Yeah. I know I'm not explaining it in the best kind of way because we've sort of had to get you back in quick.
Yeah.
Sorry to
so I don't know what happened there. It was the audio was fine on my end, so it might have just been the system or whatever. Anyway, hello. Yes, I'm glad that this guy has been able to sort of say his piece and to push back against narratives. I don't think he has much of a case under the definition of the terrorism under the Act, although he has, I think, a philosophical point to make about how broad that definition is and the fact that certain other groups would definitely fall under terrorism that realistically aren't. But I don't know that works within the confines of this particular case. You would have to take that to the Supreme Court or the European Court of Human Rights or something to strike that law down and have it rewritten by Parliament, which isn't going to happen in this case. But I'm glad that he's had this opportunity, because it sort of exposes a thing within the media that I find very, very frustrating, and that is the media love to morally grandstand when they think they have an absolute slam dunk case against anybody, whether it be Hamas or, as you said, the IRA or whoever. They will deny the ability of them to even use the legal recourse, which is supposedly the inherently strong, beautiful part of our system. As the man pointed out, under Section 4 of the Terrorism Act, any organisation on the earth that is designated as a terrorist group has a right to appeal that designation. Any group, the IRA, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, anyone. Okay, that's the strength of our legal case, or the strength of our legal system, supposedly. But if you try to do so, they will say, "How can you possibly sleep at night?" It's ridiculous. The same people who will ask that question of the lawyer are fine with what Israel has been doing. This man is the lawyer is just using the legal system in order to try and test the strength of the legal system, I suppose, in a sense. He's not killed anybody. He hasn't hurt a single person, as far as we're aware, in the world. Israel has killed tens of thousands of people and is currently trying to destroy the livable existence of 2 million people, as well as still continuing their attacks on the West Bank. If Hamas are a terrorist organisation, how on earth are the IDF not a terrorist organisation? Yeah. How on earth are the Israeli cabinet not a terrorist organisation? How is the Knesset not a terrorist organisation? Please, can anyone answer me that question? And ultimately, the same people who will morally grandstand about a lawyer taking a case pro bono are absolutely fine with the use of our weapons destroying the lives of Palestinians. Our taxpayer money being used on RAF reconnaissance flights from RAF Akrotiri to help aid and abet the genocide of the Palestinian people by the IDF. And those people are sick.
So you're right, it's almost entirely... almost 100% likely it's not going to work. Because they're subscribed as a terrorist organization here, it's not going to go through in terms of the law. But this is not what it's about. Okay, to me, this is about pushing back on a broader rhetoric, which is the fact that, as you've just perfectly laid out, Israel is a terrorist state, and the fact that anything you charge Hamas with, right, Israel's done 100 times more.
Yes.
Therefore, it is complete bias to say, well, Hamas are a terrorist organization, but Israel or the IDF or Netanyahu isn't a terrorist. And this is where these media pundits are pushing Zionist talking points, because they'll say stuff like, how do you sleep at night representing Hamas? And obviously Frank is pushing back and saying, well, at the moment, we have multiple countries. We have multiple court proceedings saying that this is plausibly a genocide. Okay? And if you're defending Israel, you are technically defending genocide, or you are denying genocide. And this is the question you put to Patrick, whatever his name was on the Talk TV show. That was on LBC, I think, but on...
okay. Oh, the Northern Irishman. I don't know.
Yeah, on the first clip. And it's like he's live on TV denying a genocide because we actually have legal proceedings backing it up. Now, of course, we all knew it was genocide before the courts came out in this ruling, but now it's on paper. And no one asked these people, how do you sleep at night? No one asked Keir Starmer when he fucking said on TV that Israel has a right to cut off water and electricity. No one asked him, how does he sleep at night? But it's always those that defend the other side. And again, this isn't about trying to make a moralist argument of whether Hamas are good or not. This isn't it. This is about destroying the entire Zionist framing that Israel can do no wrong and everything is down to Hamas, with removing the entire context as to why Hamas exists. Hamas would not exist if there wasn't a 75-year occupation.
Well, exactly, yeah. The same people who will argue, and that how can he possibly sleep at night, are fine with the fact that next week we have the Israeli foreign minister arriving in Britain for a diplomatic mission. A man who sits in the cabinet, who was appointed by a prime minister who was wanted by the ICC for war crimes.
Yeah,
and ICC, an organisation we are signed up to. That's absolutely fine. No one is going to ask David Lammy how he sleeps at night. No one's going to ask Keir Starmer how he sleeps at night. Damned it, I dare say they won't ask the Israeli foreign minister how he sleeps at night. But a lawyer doing the things that you would expect a lawyer to do, like filing a legal complaint at the High Court, that somehow is so morally offensive to these people that they need to pearl clutch and get the fainting couch out. It's an embarrassing Zionist joke.
Quite right. I think we're going to move on, though, because we've got another 2 stories to get through. But before we do, I just want to say, if you're enjoying this show, then please like the stream. And if you're not a subscriber, then hit that button. If you want us to grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you can become a YouTube member for just 99p. If you don't have the means, please don't feel obligated to do so. Liking the stream, commenting, sharing, and just having conversations offline about Turn Left and telling people about us is good enough. We need that support too. Remember, we are just a group of 5 volunteers. We're doing this around our paid work, but of course we want this to be our full-time jobs so we can improve our journalistic integrity, improve the quality of our content, less tech issues, and we can bring content more often. We can go live every single day. We could do more ambitious content, more interviews, more vox pops and documentaries. That is what we have in the future for Turn Left, and you could be a part of it. So, let's move on. The Supreme Court has ruled a woman is defined by their biological sex. The court sided with campaign group For Women Scotland, which brought a case against the Scottish government arguing that sex-based protections should only apply to people that are born female. Judge Lord Hodge said the ruling should not be seen as a triumph of one side over the other and stressed that the law still gives protection against discrimination to transgender people. The Scottish government argued in court that transgender people with a Gender Recognition Certificate, GRC for short, are entitled to the same sex-based protections as biological women. The Supreme Court was asked to decide on the proper interpretation of the 2010 Equality Act, which applies across Britain. Lord Hodge said the central question was how the words woman and sex are defined in the legislation. He told the court the unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex. Now, this puts the entirety of trans people's lives into uncertainty. Now, even though the court ruling says that this isn't about being biased and that trans people will be protected, in reality, it won't. This leaves trans people far more exposed to discrimination. Now, we also have some insight into why we have this outcome. Trans women were excluded from the hearings. The court has been criticised after it refused to allow trans women to take part in the hearings, although it did allow the civil rights group Amnesty UK to participate on the Scottish Government side. Victoria MacLeod, a retired judge who changed her legal sex more than 20 years ago, was refused permission to be heard in the case. She said that meant the only effective group was excluded. She said the FWS case had failed at all previous stages. If the legal sex of trans people is reversed without our consent, then we will lose equal pay rights with men, to cite one example, and we will be 2 sexes at once, which is nonsense, she said. Now, that paragraph there tells me that this was clearly biased, but given the court ruling was based on the Equalities Act, this means it should be updated to clarify and strengthen rights for trans people so that any future court rulings would protect them. Now, Labour can stand up and strengthen trans people's rights. The problem is whether this Labour government will. And I think that Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, is unambiguously transphobic. Kevin, what do you make of this court ruling, and where does that leave trans people in Britain today?
I'm disgusted. I don't think I've ever been less proud of the place I'm from, given the aforementioned, genocide participation and things like that. On top of that, now we're basically saying there are bits of populations that we can just hive off now to have no rights. It's disgusting. It really is. Just a quick message to all trans people listening to this. If you're a trans woman, you're a woman. If you're a trans man, you're a man. If you're non-binary, you're non-binary, and you're all entirely valid. No court can ever take that away from you. I want you to remember that in all of this. You know who you are, and you are who you are. This court case was obviously biased. As you mentioned, not a single trans person was allowed to speak before it, even though several tried to. So the only affected group was the group that was excluded. It's taking us back to not even Victorian era justice at this point, but Roman era justice, where the accused isn't allowed to testify on their own behalf. It's genuinely embarrassing. This group of ossified, crusty, law lord freaks need to be done away with. The Supreme Court has shown itself to be nothing but a biased, conservative, retrograde force in British life and needs to be destroyed. The one ray of hope that I think we have is that this will almost certainly be appealed to the European Court of Human Rights, and I think it's almost certain to be overturned there because this flatly contradicts previous rulings that have been given. I mean, one of the cases they literally cited in their decision is a case that will ultimately be used against them and will bring this court case down in Europe, I think, is that of Godwin versus the UK, where the European Court of Human Rights basically upheld that you can't hold people in a kind of gender-based limbo. You can't have them between a rock and a hard place between two gender defined positions. Okay, you can't have groups of people that essentially are in a legal grey area. That's not allowed. You have to have a final decision on this, which will force the UK government to then have to rewrite the law. And like you say, given that Wes Streeting will very possibly be the leader of the Labour Party by the time that happens, because Keir Starmer's not going to be around for very much longer. That doesn't bode well for the future in that sense, but it will be overturned, I think, at the European Court of Human Rights. No, and I was just going to say, the fact that this is being done in the way that it's being done is so ridiculous because it's being used, the argument of common sense is being used, that it's about definitions of biological sex. Okay, well, define that then. Because you can't. You know you can't. That's a lie in of itself. It's a lie built upon a lie. Because every time anyone tries to define that as a concept, they will exclude people who should be included, and they will include people who should be excluded. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely ludicrous. This is not the basis for a sound legal judgment. This is conservative culture war wank.
I have to stress to people that there's this pervasive idea that's been pushed by the media, pushed by likes of J.K. Rowling, that we're progressive people, we're concerned about women, but we think that the existence of trans people is actually misogyny. It's actually men trying to invite themselves into women's spaces, and actually we are the biggest defenders of women's rights. And when you break it down every single time, transphobia is just another conservative movement. You often find transphobes with also very conservative beliefs when it comes to gay, bi, lesbians. So it's not that, oh, we're really progressive, but just this one thing we don't get. You can see it all of the time. You can see many people who, I mean, what's her name? Posey Parker, the one who stands with Nazis, the one who's also then said stuff about, oh, none of us support abortion. Well, how's that for your women's rights? And I've always tried to stress to people, maybe I'm not the best person to say this, or I explain it the best, but when you attack trans people, and specifically trans women, it always falls on cis women too. Yeah. It is in the interest of cis women to stand with trans people.
Well, we all know that the TERF movement in the UK has been funded by AstroTurf money from the United States, from dark, far-right money, Christian authoritarian groups, right? Mm-hmm. We know that the TERF movement are very fond of Donald Trump, a man who is a multiple rapist, who has cheated on all of his wives, and has celebrated his role in the removal of people's medical rights in the United States, that being the right to reproductive health care. These people don't care for women in the slightest. If they did, they wouldn't support any of these things. And yet they do. They're just transphobic. They're just transphobic hate mongers and nothing more than that.
You know, when I initially saw the headline, I thought, okay, maybe this is a case that the court is taking the Equalities Act literally, in terms of they technically interpret it correctly, but it just meant that the Equalities Act wasn't updated, or it wasn't trans inclusive, because it does say, it references sex and women. And I think that my knee-jerk reaction was essentially, right, okay, this is the court ruling. The problem isn't necessarily with the court, the problem is with the Equalities Act, but it clearly doesn't enshrine trans people into law in terms of their protections, right? That was my initial thing. And then I thought, well, okay, it's simple then. Update the Equalities Act. And then I thought, it's the Labour government, I don't think they're going to do that. But then I read into it, as I pointed out earlier, and as you pointed out, when they barred trans people from any hearings, there is no way, because I was willing to give the benefit of the doubt first, There is no way you can say this isn't biased when the entire thing, the entire group they are talking about and ruling on, trans people, are being excluded from it. Then this is anything but bias, and it is disgusting.
It's not. This isn't justice. This isn't justice in any real respect whatsoever. Trans people have been excluded from it. It's being done on the basis of quote unquote common sense about biological sex at birth, which is a presumption of administration rather than anything to do with biology. So there's that. There's the fact that it's the entire framing of this is around turf nonsense from start to finish, all of it. I agree that the Gender Recognition Act needs to be changed and updated because clearly this isn't working. It's just that the people in Parliament now, I don't trust them to tie their own shoelaces, let alone actually do legislation. And I just want to sort of point out to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court what a liar he is, because in a very technical sense, this decision doesn't change the law in that it doesn't change a single word that appears in legislation. Because that's not the role of the Supreme Court. It's not a part of the legislature. It doesn't literally make laws in that respect. But law is about
current law, isn't it?
Exactly. Law is not about what you write on a piece of paper. It's how you implement it. We know, for instance, that the Hunting with Dogs Act bans the live hunting of foxes with dogs on horseback, right? And yet we know it happens every weekend throughout the winter and autumn months, and indeed the summer months. And yet the police do nothing about it because the law is only so good as it's implemented. If the police don't do anything about it, if the courts don't do anything about it, it's meaningless. And this is exactly the point I make. He hasn't changed a single sentence, a single word, a single full stop or comma in any of the laws. And yet he has revolutionized the way in which this law will be applied. Essentially, trans women, and indeed women, cis women who don't have the correct documentation on them at the time that they are challenged, have had their rights removed from them and can be removed from single-sex spaces.
And this is the problem I have when they say, "Oh well, no, don't worry. This isn't biased in one group or the other. Trans people are still protected in the law." And you have to understand that yes, you're right. The Supreme Court doesn't write new laws, but the interpretation of the law and the communication to the masses fundamentally changes the narrative behind it and emboldens bigots. Now you're going to have people saying, well, actually, it's going to breed, I think, civilian policing on trans people. I saw someone go into the bathroom and I think they might be trans. And now they think they actually might have a legal case for it. And they're going to start causing harassment, calling up the police. It emboldens these people. Yeah.
There are going to be a slew of cases of harassment and physical assault against, like I say, not just trans women, of course, although it would be bad regardless of their gender situation. There are going to be lots of cis women who don't necessarily apply to the exact femininity rules that have been set in somebody else's head, and they will be physically accosted and challenged. You're going to have, I think, essentially examples of far-right vigilantism being aimed at people who are gender non-conforming, who just want to go and use the toilet or some other gender single-sex space or whatever. This is a recipe for disaster. And it's being sold to us under the guise of this straightening things out. This is going to be a situation which clears up all of the grey areas. No, what you've done is taken a relatively black and white issue and made it virtually all grey now, because every single woman has the potential to not look feminine enough in the mind of somebody else. And 100%. So unless you have the exact documentation necessary to prove that you are a cis woman to this person's liking, they can potentially physically try and remove you from a space. You're going to have, I don't even know what to call it, pussy policing outside of toilets. Like, it's an insane position that you have left us in. It's obviously conservative nonsense, and thankfully it will be struck down in Europe, I'm pretty sure. When I
say to people, if you're having a conversation with, the term TERF is kind of bullshit because it's got feminist in it. Let's just say it's just conservative belief, right? Yeah. It's just a bigoted conservative belief. It's not even a TERF belief, right? But if you're having discussions with transphobes, they're very good at sort of like identifying a false problem, which is that men in women's bathrooms, blah 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 blah. What they don't know how to answer is, what are you going to do about it, though? What's your solution to it all? And that's where the point you made was about genital policing. Like, Is that what you're going to do? So you keep moaning about trans people. We get it, right? You feel uncomfortable about trans people. It's not like we haven't heard this for the last at least 10 years, right? We get it. So what's your solution? And they don't have any, because they know that actually their transphobia is completely illogical, because it puts a target on all women's back, because now you're going to have people going to be more heightened to the idea of the idea that, oh, maybe they are trans. How are you going to check? Are you going to check their genitals? Are you going to have police on the entrance of toilets checking your genitals before you go into the correct bathroom? All these things actually makes it more complicated. So these people saying, oh, this clarifies it. It doesn't clarify it. It just means that it made some people feel a little bit better, because they can simply only understand that gender and sex are the same thing. And it's simply not the case that gender and sex are the same thing. They are different.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a ridiculous situation that we've now been put in, because of course these people will try and stir up and gin up fear about trans people invading these spaces that makes people unsafe. It doesn't make people unsafe. Straight cis white men make people unsafe, largely in Britain, because that's the majority of the people who do these crimes. That's just a fact, okay? And you can't stop either trans people or indeed cis men from necessarily entering a toilet, because you can't have a policeman at the entrance of every toilet, okay?
Exactly.
Safety doesn't come from trying to exclude trans people from this. That's not how safety arrives at all. We've literally had the absurd situation. You mentioned Posey Parker, her famous clip of her saying that in America, where people are allowed to have guns, because obviously, that men with guns should be going into women's toilets to make them feel safe. I can't think of a more ridiculous recipe for violence against women than something like that.
And the irony saying, we don't want men in women's toilets, but also we want men in women's toilets with guns.
Yeah. And it's so demeaning, actually, to all women, that they're being boiled down to their genitals, in essence, which, of course, excludes intersex people and all manner of other things. But also, the legal definition of... They've now legally defined for the first time ever in British law what a lesbian is. I don't know about you, but if I were a lesbian, I wouldn't want some disgusting High Court judge telling me what I am or am not.
True.
This is an absurd... disgusting piece of reactionary nonsense. This is not a legal ruling. This is a joke. This is a farce.
Before we move on, I just want to read a quick statement from Turn Up, because not everyone watching goes on Twitter or Blue Sky or follows us. So I thought I'd give us a chance to put out a statement on here. We've written, all of us at Turn Left stand in solidarity with the trans community following this morning's judgment from the Supreme Court. Trans women are women. No ruling from any court will ever change that. It is extremely disappointing that testimony from anti-trans hate groups and the exclusion of testimony from trans voices has led to today's ruling. Despite the Supreme Court suggesting this will not have a negative impact on trans rights, this is a significant step backwards in that fight, and unfortunately, this will be abused by the usual suspects to spread further transphobic rhetoric. But as always, we at Turn Left will continue to advocate for and support the rights of all marginalised groups. Let's move on to our final story of the evening. Liz Truss has come up with a great idea of creating a free speech, uncensored social media network. Liz Truss is preparing to launch her own social media platform championing free speech, as she warns the deep state and mainstream media was stifling freedom of expression in Britain. The former Prime Minister said the platform would launch this summer. It is her latest attempt to become a leading figure on the radical right in Britain, openly declaring her support for Donald Trump and Elon Musk's mission to slash state spending in the US. Now, why is she creating a new social media network when Twitter under Musk exists? I mean, surely this platform is perfect for her, a platform that bolsters right-wing accounts while stifling the left. Unless she's in favour of a platform that allows you to say the words cisgender without your post being deleted. I doubt that. Now, this is what she had to say at a recent Bitcoin conference.
The West will be finished in 10 years. And what do I mean by that? I mean, we have been threatened by left-wing ideology, whether it's excessive government spending, whether it's net zero ideology, whether it's things like DEI and ESG, whether it's Islamism. All of these things have conspired to hollow out our countries, to stagnate our growth, but also to present real threats to the way of life in the West. And I am a Trump supporter. I think that Trump getting elected last year was the first domino to be falling in the right direction in terms of saving the West, because otherwise I think that we will see China and radical Islam, two terrible partners, win against the West. That is the threat we face. We're seeing industry decimated. I mean, MPs have just been recalled to Parliament this weekend to renationalise the steel industry because it's uneconomic. So all of those things that, and we were the country that invented steel. We invented the blast furnace, and yet these things are being closed down. So what I am saying is the fundamentals that made our society and our economy great have been jettisoned in order to pursue some very, very dubious ideology. And we've seen it in transgender extremism, we've seen it in the rise of the size of government, we've seen it in things like net zero, and it has got to a stage now where it is damaging our society from within. What I am doing is establishing a new free speech network which will be uncensored and uncancelable to actually talk about the issues people don't want to talk about.
I mean, she's that boring, the audio cut out anyway. I mean, that was nearly 2 minutes of verbal diarrhea with all the right-wing buzzwords. She was Prime Minister. Just think about that. She was our Prime Minister. A complete clown. She doesn't believe in anything, by the way. She doesn't believe in anything she's saying. She is just trying to grift and gain prominence in right-wing circles. There she is essentially blaming the fall of the steel industry and our industrial policy on transgender extremism. Kevin, Truss has managed to blame the downfall of this country on everything apart from the 14 years of a Tory government she was very much a part of. What do you make of this anti-woke rant and this new social media network of hers?
Well, I'm very right wing, and I loved it. It's just buzzword bingo. That wasn't it. Jesus, she hit everything. Like some of the grotesqueness of it. China and Islam are in bed together, as if the Chinese government haven't been doing the genocide against Uyghur Muslims, for crying out loud. I mean, she's just off her rocker. Also, I think it should be legally specified that when someone describes her as former prime minister, the word technically should have to come before it, because she was technically prime minister, but not really when you think about it. We were clearly living in a lettuceocracy, and I, for one, welcome our lettuce overlords. She's a clown. She's just a clown. There's no point taking her seriously. She's just a grifty, silly clown. She's years behind in the culture war as well. The culture war grift of setting up a free speech network was like 5 years ago. You're out of touch, right? We've had Truth Social and Gab and Parler and Let That Sink In, X.com, the Everything app. It's already happened. And of course, it doesn't work. We know it doesn't work because if you make something completely uncensored, it just turns into like Nazism and child porn and pictures of like dead bodies and feces. It's ridiculous.
Right wing and then silencing left wing voices, as I mentioned about Twitter.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah,
the word cisgender. It will full on Nazi accounts on Twitter.
It will always be censored. There's no such thing as an uncensored anything.
Yeah.
Every right comes with a responsibility. Every freedom comes with a reasonable curtailment because they overlap with other people's freedoms. I don't want to see weird Nazi nonsense. I shouldn't have to see images of abuse on the social medias. You don't have a right to post that, so it gets censored. But apparently that's bad because my freedoms or some nonsense. This is absurd. It's just culture war grift from top to bottom because that's all she has. She doesn't have a political history behind her that she can be proud of. Her time as technically prime minister is not something that anyone would ever want. She had one policy, it failed so badly that she was immediately done away with. That's how bad she was. So she can't point to that as anything. So now she just grifts. Literally that clip you had of her was from a Bitcoin conference. Honestly, if you ever see me at a Bitcoin conference, just you can jettison me into the sun, frankly. That's how embarrassing that is.
I'll take you on that offer.
And she's a fan of Donald Trump. Again, just goes to show you the transphobes do love a cis male rapist, apparently. There you go. Who knew? She's a joke. She's a clown.
I mean, this goes to something a bit deeper, though. She has a book called 10 Years to Save the West. And basically, ever since failing as technically being a prime minister, she has tried to push this narrative, which is what a lot of right-wing and far-right people do, which is that those in power aren't really the powerful. It's this amalgamation of, and what Matt Goodwin talks about, these new elites of trans people, of the radical left-wing mob, whoever they may be, anyone who isn't actually those in power. And she talks about we've lived under left-wing ideology for so long, but by the way, we haven't. What we've had is 45 years of Thatcherism. The political debate has gone so far to the right that this Labour Party is cutting disability benefits. But yes, we're under this left-wing ideology. And basically, she's pushing this narrative that we need to save the West. And the downfall of the West is nothing to do with austerity, nothing to do with climate change, although, it's West, that's globally. Nothing to do with the fact that we're living in a very unsafe world. Not to do with wars, not to do with fascism, but it's because of government spending, transgender extremism, and whatever buzzword she does. Yeah. The problem here, though, is that this to me feels like the death knell, the final embers of neoliberalism, which is like we still cannot, defend people's living standards. They're getting worse. And people are going to look at the economic policies that have led to basically people living shitty lives, and they're going to blame that. But what we need to do is obviously stick it on culture wars. But as people's material conditions get worse, you almost have to up the ante on the culture wars to keep people distracted. And it's left with basically entire industry. It's not just commentators now. An entire industry that is repurposing the actual elites. Like Donald Trump is literally the elite. Liz Truss, well-connected, is the elite. Right, she's not as rich as Trump, whatever, but she's all part of the elite.
She was technically prime minister, yeah.
Exactly. They've repackaged the actual elites as the revolutionaries, the counter-revolutionaries to the so-called establishment left-wing politics. There's a lot to put in there, but we really need to dispel this entire myth that's been completely flipped on its head.
Yeah, as always, the right wing will do anything but talk about economics.
Mm-hmm.
So the entirety of the grift, whenever you hear anyone talk about transgender ideology or Islamism or DEI, they're just doing that to distract from the fact that economically we've lived in the most right-wing part of the most right-wing element of history, and it's gone extraordinarily badly for the vast majority of people. So rather than allowing that to be the focus of anything, they just dangle the keys in front of your eyes. It's shiny. Look at this thing. That's all they're doing, essentially. They're treating you like a baby. And unfortunately, it works all too well with a great number of people, mainly because they're able to set the narrative, because they own all of the media, because of all the right-wing economics, etc., etc. It feeds into itself. The Donald Trump, like you say, a billionaire, her technically former prime minister, all of these very, very powerful people that have been running things for so long have to distract you from the fact that they have been running it for so long and that your life has gone terribly underneath that system. So they'll start talking about, like she mentioned there, the British steel has been hollowed out and all the rest of it. That's because of the neoliberal economics that she has supported all of her adult life. That's because of policy she implemented as a government minister and then technically a prime minister. This is the thing, right? But she'll blame Islamism and China and transgender ideology for the closing down of British Steel. That's madness. What are you talking about? DEI didn't close down British Steel. Conservatism did. Neoliberal economics did. You, Liz Truss, did that.
It's almost kind of good that she's so insane in the talking points, because people going, what's Steel got to do with transgender people? And the hope is that people are going to go, what the fuck?
Honestly, the fact that she's just in America now. She's like Nigel Farage. She's just an American grifter who goes over there with a posh British accent, and that's enough apparently for some people. I don't think most people in Britain even know who she is. She wasn't technically prime minister long enough for people to even remember who the hell she is. She's just like, I vaguely recognise her. Didn't she fight a cabbage or something?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Get
That's it.
By a lettuce, something like that.
Yeah, it was something like that. So, like, let her start Lettuce Book or whatever. Go for it, Liz.
We've heard the names, haven't we? We've got
someone suggested Twatter, which I think is quite nice. Yeah.
See, I love that name, but when I heard Lawrence Fox use it, I'm now like, oh, I don't want to use it because it's been out of his mouth.
That's true.
Truth. No, what is it? Lettuce. I've heard lettuce book. That's one you wrote, wasn't it? Lettuce book. No, it
I think
wasn't,
that
was
was.
it?
Well, I think I did write that somewhere. I don't think I came up with it, but yeah.
Basically, put your best Liz Truss social media name in the chat.
Yeah, let us
I ain't
know
got the
down below in the
imagination for
comment
it.
section.
In the comments section. I ain't got the imagination to come up with something funny.
Yeah, but anyway, let us start a stupid thing. It'll fail just like they always do. Because this is the thing. The right wing need libs to trigger. So whenever they start one of these things, no libs go there. No leftist goes there. Other than, I mean, I've got an account as the ghost of Hugo Chavez on basically every single account just to mock them, right? Just to take the bit.
Yeah.
But other than that, it gets very boring after like a day. And so no leftist joins them. And so it's just right wingers with no one to trigger. So they all just go back to the same places. They go back to Facebook and Twitter and that because they need to troll. That's all they're doing, you know?
Can you believe that when she was younger, she was a Lib Dem? And I know the Lib Dems are hardly
Yeah.
radical, but she was a
I
Lib Dem
can
calling for the
believe that.
abolishment of the monarchy.
I can believe that because the Lib Dems are rubbish. Yeah. The Lib Dems are rubbish. Most of them are just Tories that are less homophobic. Although except in the case of Tim Farron, obviously.
Tim Farron, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
so
she
the
was
fact
also
that she
calling for the
became a
abolishment
Tory
of
is
the
not
monarchy, and I just
not
love that because I
surprised.
think her parents are kind of progressive, and I just find it funny that she's there and now she's
Well,
at a
she called for
Bitcoin
the
conference.
well, she called for the end of the monarchy, and then she killed the Queen. So
maybe she is a left winger in disguise. Who knows?
for legal reasons, the Queen died randomly when she happened to technically be Prime Minister, and that she was not necessarily guilty of murder or anything.
Well, maybe she's being incredibly stupid on purpose, so she's turning people away from the right.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. She is just an idiot.
No, she's just an idiot. Yeah.
Okay, I think let's bring in our producer and let's go to your comments. It's been a really good show. We've got through 4 stories today, so there's got to be a lot to talk about. Cog.
Oh,
How
yes,
are we?
there absolutely is. But just want to go to a couple of super chats first because we've got Spexbean Farmer who
Yes, Specs,
donated
good to see you
£2.
again, Day Job Gang.
Day Job Gang, yeah, that was when we were having the tech issues and stuff. I think that's all good. And then we have Journeying Jordan, who says, "Thanks for your kind words, Kev. It does mean something when cis people defend us in these trying times. Transphobes are just inviting men into single-sex spaces."
Yeah, absolutely.
Really appreciate that, and thank you for the super chat, Jordan.
Superb. And now I can get to the comments I've started. So first of all, because we all love it, I do love Kevin Curtis flirting. Oh, yes. Thank you, Dominic.
It's in your minds. It's not...
You're welcome. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Okay. And we have Houston with the cheek that the media has to turn striking onto unions as if they haven't demonized trade unionists and the left for years.
Yeah.
Any commentary on particularly the way the media have handled this?
Oh, the media are just an extension of the an arm of capital. It's a joke, yeah. The fact that Sebastian Payne isn't laughed out of the room is enough to just show you what a load of rubbish it is.
Yeah, I mean, he provides some light entertainment, though, because how many times has he tried to be a Tory MP? And how many
He's essentially the kind of Tory version of Paul, what's his face? The failed Labour member for a million years. He's a joke.
Oh,
yeah,
not the writer who tried.
Yeah,
him.
What's
He's
his
got a Tory
name?
Version.
Yeah.
What is his name?
Paul something or other. He used to be on Newsnight.
He stood in the by-election when George Galloway won.
Did he? What?
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. No, Paul War. It's Paul War, isn't it?
No, Paul Mason. There we go. Paul Mason.
Oh, God, I'm so sorry. I thought you.
Paul Mason.
Paul Mason makes way more sense because he pretended to be Welsh he changed his bio to Welsh and it didn't translate properly. Yeah, so I know. I thought it was like Paul War because Paul War's the writer. He's a bit of a Blair, right? He also tried, but Mason's funnier.
Yeah.
100%. And obviously referring to the second story. And what was the name of the lawyer? I can't remember.
Frank Magennis.
Frank Magennis. This lawyer is cool as a cucumber, 100%. And then in relation to that, we had terrorism is a highly subjective and loaded term, to be fair. It's usually applied to groups who oppose and take action against state actors.
Well, that's unfortunately the problem, is that whilst, of course, I think it's reasonable that the state has a designation for a terrorist group, so they would be treated differently legally than a non-terrorist group, that it's so often used as a smear. It's so often used to deny the human rights of people rather than to enhance the human rights of potential victims. It's ridiculous.
Well, the problem with when states categorize terrorist groups, right, they're only really categorizing it on whether they stand geopolitically. If they are allied to us, then they cannot be terrorists. But if they are antagonistic to the West, or not even antagonistic to the West, but are just not on the same side as the UK, then they're considered terrorists. And obviously, the best case is Hamas and Israel. I don't have an issue with the UK saying that Hamas is a terrorist group. I just want the consistency. And again, it doesn't mean that Palestinians shouldn't have armed struggle. They absolutely should. But I also want to see Israel on that list, because they've done far more and far worse. But they won't, because terrorism in this country and many nations in the West is whose side are you on? That's it.
Yeah.
I just want some fucking consistency.
Well, just look at the way in which Ukrainian resistance is lauded and Palestinian resistance is prescribed.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the term with again, with people being designated terrorists. It's more the extrajudicial punishments that are applied to people that we label terrorists. Like, that is, I think, where the real problems kick in. Because you get accused of most crimes, you get a fair trial. You get accused of being a terrorist, you're particularly in the US, you're likely to end up in Guantanamo Bay or El Salvador more recently. And that's been a problem that's been developing since the early 2000s.
Well, in Britain, because of the Serious and Organised Crime Prevention Act, if you are held under as a potential terrorist, you don't even have the right to remain silent. You literally have to answer questions. It will be held against you if you do not. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it's that erosion of your rights, which is, like, I think, most concerning about the discussion around terrorism, rather than the particular nuances of what a terrorist is or isn't. Yeah. I want to bring this up because I thought it was important on the issue of the Supreme Court ruling. So this Saturday, at 1 p.m, there will be a rally in Parliament Square, standing up for trans rights and standing against the Supreme Court ruling. I don't know much about this. I'm literally just projecting this, but hopefully we can find out more. And if people want to tag us on social media, we're happy to repost and get the information out there. And continuing with that theme, Natalie, who is I hope Natalie doesn't mind me saying, is a trans woman, says at Turn Left, in a phrase, we are fucked legally. My biology is not that of a male, so what am I? And it's this dubious legal place that they've been put in. Yeah,
it's trans people are in a sort of limbo. Where are they now? And the thing is, though, once you do that, all it does is open this up to more discrimination, more abuse. Like, you think this court ruling is going to be better for trans people? It's absolutely not.
No,
it's only going to be worse. So, I mean, it's hard when you report on these stories. It feels devastating to tell, especially our audience and our trans audience and non-binary audience, like, things are really, really bad. It feels heartbreaking to say because you don't want people to give up hope, but you also can't lie to people. So I think I'm glad that, Cog, you brought up that last comment about where people can organise. That's all we can really do. We can report on the news, we can push back on it, and then people need to organise.
Yeah. I don't want to scare people. I don't want to scare people, but I also can't lie to them and say that this is all fine. Yeah. It isn't. It just isn't. I have a certain amount of confidence that will be appealed to the European Court of Human Rights, and I have a relative confidence that if that case is taken, that it will be successful. Because the European Court, this flatly goes against previous rulings from the European Court, who haven't changed massively in that time. Yeah. So, there's hope, but I'm not going to pretend that this isn't a genuinely grim day. The lie of the chief of the Supreme Court saying that this shouldn't be seen as a victory for one side or the other. There's a reason that TERFs were popping champagne on the steps of the High Court today.
Yeah, I saw that image and I just thought, this is how like false it felt to me, right? Which was like, it felt so middle class. Like, who goes to a court proceeding like this and brings champagne out? Like, maybe I'm wrong, but to me, that does not compute on a serious issue about people's human rights. And you're popping champagne.
Yeah, they're sick. I mean, there's a joke, obviously, about J.K. Rowling and the mold taking part of her brain, but there is genuinely something odd that needs to be studied about the way in which people get sucked into the extremist pipeline of turfery, because you've seen it so many times now. What's it? Graham Linehan.
Graham Linehan, yeah,
was a normal lib, boring guy, but a normal lib who got into the turf pipeline and is now like a rabid weirdo fascist, just a very strange man. J.K. Rowling was a contributor to the Labour Party for a number of years and a kind of basic, left lib person, got sucked into the pipeline, and now, like, it's so bizarre to me. LBC put out a thing today saying she broke her silence on this. Broke her silence, mother flippers. She talks about nothing else. She sits in a castle surrounded by mold, talking about how the trans people are going to eat her fish or something. It's just ridiculous. What are you talking about?
Broke us. It's like saying that is almost like when the media says a rare intervention by Tony Blair and he hasn't shut the fuck up. But J.K. Rowling's even more vocal about it. And you're right, I really do want someone to look into this, because there seems to be, specifically with transphobia, this massive pipeline that brings people to fascism. Yeah, J.K. Rowling, standard lib. Graham Linehan, standard lib. I've seen so many people who you would consider like pretty open, I'm bygones be bygones, live how you want to live. And for some reason,
it's largely middle class lib people who get suckered into it, and I think it's sort of an extension of a modern sort of problem of the algorithm and things like that. People get sucked into this doom scrolling thing, and it can take them down a number of different pipelines towards kind of weirdo ethnic supremacist rubbish or cis supremacist nonsense or whatever. It can suck you down the kind of incel pipeline or whatever. It's the fact that the algorithm and again it goes back to capital wanting to do what capital always does, which is reproduce itself and create more and more money for a smaller and smaller group of people. It sucks people into a really, really dangerous way of thinking and a kind of bombardment of propaganda in one direction, which the human brain isn't really wired to deal with very effectively, it seems. And then it's something needs to be studied and done about that before, like, I don't want to be too Liz Truss, but before civilization is genuinely upended in a way, because we've seen in the post-truth world that essentially what is real doesn't matter anymore. And that's so dangerous. It really is.
Yeah, I agree.
Because King Jaehaerys realised that the only thing that could destroy the House of the Dragon was itself, i.e. the Western civilization is the biggest danger.
Stop being a nerd. Stop being a nerd.
I will never stop being a nerd. Fuck you, Kevin.
Is that House of the Dragon or is that Game of Thrones? Because Game of Thrones fucking ended badly. I'm sorry.
Absolutely it did. That's House of the Dragon, the follow-up series. Very good, by the way. Kevin,
degeneracy is what it is.
Exactly. Becca says a TERF is a trans-excluding radical feminist, but as a feminist, I reject their claim to feminism. I would just call them transphobic bigots. I wanted to just rant on this for a second, if you guys don't mind, because I read through some of the proceedings and I can see the fundamental mistake that For Women Scotland make when describing sexism in the ruling of the court. So, for example, they say, because ultimately their decision was about whether or not sex should be something that is certificated, i.e. done on certification, or whether it should be just purely biological. And they say that, for example, some of the arguments that were used were, it's impractical on a day-to-day level to have people's like confidential certification being the basis on which whether you describe discrimination against them as okay or not. But we protect people on the basis of characteristics which are confidential all the time. Like, you don't know whether a gay person is gay. That's something that they don't have to disclose to their employer. You don't know whether a disabled person is genuinely disabled. That's not something you're not expected to like produce a doctor's note to prove that you're disabled on a day-to-day basis, protecting yourself from discrimination. It doesn't apply in any other circumstance. But the interesting one to me was when they said, "Oh well, the Equalities Act talks about protections for pregnancy and maternity discrimination," and that's really interesting because essentially saying that somebody who is a trans woman can't get pregnant, therefore they don't need pregnancy and maternity discrimination. But would you apply this logic to an infertile cis woman? Because she can't get pregnant either, and she is also to me, it fundamentally misunderstands what discrimination in employment looks like in terms of pregnancy. It's being denied promotions or being denied a job for fear that you might in 5 years go on maternity leave, and and by the way, men are more likely to quit those jobs because men are more likely to move on quickly.
Also, some people are saying in the comments, trans men can give birth, so they're almost making the pro-trans argument in of itself, because they're saying we need to protect people based on who can get pregnant. What about trans men?
I understand what they're saying. Yeah, there is an element of that.
Yeah,
but I think that the problem is. The problem that you run into is that a passing trans woman is just as likely to be discriminated against on the basis that she might become pregnant, or an employer might perceive her as becoming pregnant.
Gotcha.
That as an infertile cis woman, or a cis woman who actually can get pregnant, or indeed a trans man. Like all of these groups face discrimination. So the only answer to me seems to be that it has to be based on certification and biology, because the very argument of sex-based rights is a nonsense in itself. No one would describe anti-racism as genetics-based rights. Like nobody talks like that, because it's not about like the like biological characteristics. It's about the essentialism. It's about applying social standards and applying stereotypes to people on the basis of how you perceive them. It is not to do with the actual biology of the people.
Well, exactly. When they talk about like chromosomes, like, motherfucker, virtually no one knows what their chromosomes are, because unless you have a specific chromosomal disorder that needs to be medically dealt with, why would you ever check? I don't know what my chromosomes are. I know I'm a man, and there's nothing that you could ever do or say to convince me otherwise, because it's just the truth of myself. But I don't know what my chromosomes are. So how are chromosomes remotely relevant?
I mean, this boils down to when you try and... So when transphobes say, what is a woman? And they go, gotcha, because... We'll say it was a bit more complicated than that. But then when you nail them down to what a woman is, they'll say adult human female. I go, okay, elaborate. And they usually go into, well, they have ovaries, they can give birth. And then as soon as you go, well, what about people who can't give birth? What about people who aren't born with all the organs to do so? That's where it breaks down.
What about postmenopausal women?
Right, exactly. So even if you hit a certain age, you could give birth, but then you hit a certain...
Do you stop being a woman when you're like 50 or something?
And actually, it's really stupid to base this so-called common sense on biology, because the biology doesn't hold up. And I think that's... I mean, you've hit sort of the core issue there, Cog, is that the Supreme Court ruling has listened to just simple biology, even though that biology argument in and of itself doesn't work. Has ignored all the social aspects too, which... is funny, because if you're, as somebody who's transphobic who says they're standing up for women, what is it that women face in terms of discrimination? It's social.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all social.
Now,
so,
in terms of the nomenclature argument that's being made here, I agree wholeheartedly. They're not feminist, and so feminists shouldn't be a part of it. The reason I use the word TERF is because it's generally understood. When you say TERF, people hear, oh, that's that person's transphobe, right? Like with the word Islamophobia. Technically, a lot of the people who are Islamophobic aren't scared of Muslims necessarily, so it's not a phobia in that sense, but people understand what you mean when you say it. And so it's sort of a shame that the way in which we organise words is so haphazard, but unfortunately that is the way it works. And if the use of language is about the exchange of information, if I exchange that information in a way that I want to the person and they understand it in that way, that's the way it sort of has to be done.
I mean, I use TERF interchangeably with conservative bigots, because like technically turf is not the correct, it's not the accurate word to use, but obviously we all understand in terms of language this is sort of how it works. But we're all on the same page.
F can apply to the word feminist or the word fascist. Trans exclusionary radical fascist works quite as well. Works quite well.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a couple more things. I did want to bring up Natalie's comment, not because I have anything to say about it particularly, but I think it is a very important point to raise about risk. How many times in the last 20 years has a transgender woman committed a crime against a cis woman, and how many times has a transgender woman been on the receiving end? Who's more at risk? Trans people just undoubtedly are more likely to be victims than perpetrators of these crimes. I just wanted to. There's a couple more. I wanted to bring up this comment from William because I'm going to slightly disagree. So, William says, just going to throw it out there. I think we need to talk about the L's part in all of this, and I'm going to disagree. So the L's.
What does that mean?
Lesbian part, right?
I think referring to lesbians.
Oh,
However,
okay.
I just want to be careful because I know that a lot of the face of transphobia has had the appearance of rather like very loud transphobic lesbians have been put at the front of the transphobic movement. However, as a community, lesbians are statistically the most trans supportive group. They are the most likely to support trans rights in like every survey I've come across. I remember one from YouGov. I think it's 2022. I'm happy to be fact checked on that. But statistically, lesbians are the most trans supportive community. And I don't want misinformation spread about the lesbian community either.
The lesbian, like you say, lesbian community is statistically the most supportive. And of course, even though it's mostly mostly trans people who have been affected by this, the one group of cis people who have been affected by this are cis lesbians because they have been de-lesbianified if they are in a relationship with a trans woman. The legal definition is now identified trans at birth, AFABs who are attracted predominantly to AFABs. That's it. That is the legal definition of a lesbian now. So entire groups of people, thousands of people in this country, woke up this morning as legally a lesbian who have been depersoned as a lesbian now.
It's a very good point because actually lesbians have been invisibilized for a very, very, very long time among the LGBT or queer community. We often don't talk about lesbians a lot, but it's essential to make those 2 points. I'm just going to echo them. That Cog says lesbians are most likely to be pro-trans, and you're absolutely right. We've now de-queerified, if that's even a fucking word, of lesbians based on this stupid court ruling.
Well, it's so disgusting to me that any group of queer people would ever possibly be okay with the government interfering in the definition of who they are as a person. The government have been nothing but an enemy to queer people since the very existence of governance and the knowledge publicly of queer people. The idea that the government now have the right to determine who is or is not a lesbian is a disgusting thing. Honestly, every lesbian, every person who is a queer ally should be absolutely disgusted and ashamed that this is a thing and fight back against it with every scintilla of their being.
100%. We both went with the 100% comment. Curtis, shit, we're turning into one person.
That's 200%.
That's 200%. So just one more comment on this story. So men have always followed women into bathrooms if they're of that mind. It's why young women in pubs/clubs always go to the toilet in pairs. Any comments on the bathroom quote unquote debate?
Well, I think I made the point. It's cis men that are the threat to women. Simple. Always has been, and it always will be. That's the thing.
I think it's strange. It's always odd to me because I think when you have discussions, and I've had like not online discussions, but in real life discussions, when it comes to trans people, the bathroom debate is always the one that comes up first, right? And it's odd to me because first of all, did cis men never go into women's bathrooms before trans people were seen? Because I'm saying seen because obviously trans people have always existed despite the media saying they just popped up 5 years ago. But did cis men not infiltrate these areas? They did. And also you do not need to get to transition socially or surgically or both or to get into these women's spaces. Men did that anyway. Why would men go through all of this Just do something that they literally can do. And also, it's very funny. I saw a comment was saying, well, we need to stop trans women going to women's bathrooms. We need to make it illegal to protect women. As if to say that, well, and obviously I don't buy their framing because they just think that they're men. As if to say that, what, it's suddenly legal that men can go into women's bathrooms? They can't anyway. Whoever you are, no matter how you identify, if you assault someone in either bathroom against either gender, it's against the law. Some people are still going to commit crimes, even though the law is set out in stone. That doesn't then mean you then have to discriminate against a particular group.
Well, exactly, yeah.
Exactly.
It's illegal to go into the bathroom and rape somebody.
Yeah.
It just is. Like, there's no, you don't need a Gender Recognition Act or a Sex Discrimination Act or anything for that. This was already illegal, and there's nothing to stop a man, whether they're in a dress or otherwise, from entering them, because there aren't literally genital police at the door. No one has security at the door of a toilet. Obviously, that would be ridiculously impractical, let alone possibly illegal, right? So it's ridiculous. And the argument that it's about making women feel safe. Okay, how is you challenging the right of a woman to be there, making anyone feel safe? Because now every woman, regardless of whether they're cis or trans or non-binary or anything, could be challenged.
Yep.
They could have their right to challenge on the basis that they've been clocked by one of these weird trans police people that are going to be
investigators.
Yeah, the transvestigators in toilets that don't think you look quite cis enough. How is that making anyone feel safe? They want to go for a wee or a poo. They're not trying there to assault anybody. You're insane. This doesn't make anyone feel safe. Jesus Christ.
You said it right. People just want to go for a fucking wee or a poo.
Yeah. It's like they literally do. Like, what?
Yeah.
And there's nothing to stop, like, the threat, again, is cis men, and there's nothing to stop them there, and there's nothing in this ruling that makes any woman any safer.
No, it just makes things worse. For lesbians and trans women, but also cis women who obviously don't conform.
Yes, it's straight cis women are also going to be affected by this.
Yeah, 100%.
Every woman could potentially be quote unquote clocked now and thrown out, and then what, they're going to be safer having to go into the men's bog. You're joking? What on earth are you talking about? You're liable to catch cholera there.
Yeah,
you don't want to go in the men's.
Glad. Yeah, I am glad that that Curtis said earlier about the fact that obviously rape is already illegal, but also acting creepy in a toilet is liable to get you thrown out regardless of what sex you are. Like a cisgender woman could be in that toilet, and it would still be okay to go, they're acting a bit creepy, can security please come and pull them out? Like, that would be okay. I don't see why you think that trans people would get some like special exclusion on that point, right? They would, like, it's based on your behavior. You don't have an indefinite right, based on your behavior to not based on your behavior to use facilities. And also, I do bring up this point a lot, but I think it's really worth emphasizing. If you're worried about women's safety, and you're worried about cis men creeping into the toilets, it is easier for men who look like me, Curtis, Kevin, to pretend to be a trans man, i.e. somebody who was born female at birth and who has gone through a transition to look more male, in the world where you have to use the bathroom according to your birth sex. The predators would just go, well, I know I look like this, but I'm actually a trans man. I was born female at birth. If they know the first thing about trans people, if they know the first thing about like anything to do with this subject.
Yeah, I've said this before. In the TERF world, they think it would be safer to have someone who looks like Buck Angel have to go into the women's toilets. Literally. A guy ripped as fuck with a beard is going to walk into a women's toilet because they legally have to. And also Blair White, a very, very feminine person, having to go and use the men's toilets. Yeah. I mean, it's just a recipe for disaster.
Aren't both of those also conservative? Who are
exactly? They're both disgusting transphobes who are trans. But like they're good examples of trans people who definitely do not conform to their birth sex traditionally, who would be forced to use the wrong toilets. And I guarantee you, no woman seeing Buck Angel walk through the toilet is going to feel more safe.
I feel safer now. The law has changed.
Yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous. Absolutely absurd.
Just remind them that their rights are sex based, and I'm sure they'll be absolutely fine. Like, It's just
exactly
nonsense.
everyone else's safety and comfort is being destroyed on the altar of like 1% of queer people or 1% of straight people who are being funded by American lunatics and their like weird gross obsession with genitals.
Yeah. But they're not safer. They're also not safer.
Yeah, they're not. I guarantee Julie Bindle will get clocked and kicked out of a toilet. I just guarantee it. And that's not a joke.
No,
I'm being serious there.
But if it happens, that's
lesbians, especially lesbians of a certain era, she's an older person, took a great deal of pride in being gender non-conforming in terms of their presentation. They did not want to appear to be traditionally feminine. Butch lesbians are a thing that exist. She is one of those people. Lots of them, cis butch lesbians, will be kicked out of toilets because of this ruling.
Yeah, which is hilarious because ultimately that means that the bins are taking themselves out, even if the binmen are being unpaid, right?
Well, I feel sorry for the trans positive, the trans positive butch lesbians who don't want this.
Yeah.
You know, terrible stuff.
Yes. Just a couple of comments in the closing. So, you've heard of Truth Social. Now get ready for Truth Sociopath. Or Trust Sociopath, which I love.
Go on, Jim Speak, lad.
Was it Trustiopath? I don't
Trust
know.
Sociopath. Yeah.
Jim Speak always comes up. You can always rely on Jim.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Good stuff. And because no one takes Liz Truss seriously, the final comment is she killed the Queen and the economy. She needs to be stopped with the letters.
Well, yeah, I didn't like her killing the economy.
What about the other one, Kev? You didn't comment.
Yeah.
On the other one.
Look. I have a right to remain silent. I intend to use it.
I thought you didn't have that right.
I'm technically not a terrorist yet, so.
Oh god, this is going to be full of litigations and libel, and we're going to get the fucking.
Well, it's okay because I know a lawyer. It's fine.
All right. Well, do you know what? It's been some really good comments in there. It's been a fantastic show, and I think we've done a good job of keeping it quite condensed. That's 4 stories, and just about an hour and a half.
Well, we got through in just over an hour, which, if you consider that there was a technical problem halfway through, we did well, and then we just rambled about the comments.
Yeah, that's how it always goes.
Yeah.
But that is all we have time for. I want to thank all of our viewers who tuned in. I want to thank everyone who contributed in super chats. Of course, I want to thank Kevin for joining me tonight. Remember to like this stream if you're not a subscriber. Hit that button and also hit the notification bell because a lot of people are not realizing we're going live or any new content comes out. If you want to see us grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you can become a YouTube member for just 99p. And remember, we are a group of volunteers. There are 5 of us. We're doing this around our paid work. We're going to work, we're coming home, and we're working on the shows. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who's contributed so far, whether that's financially or just becoming a viewer. We've seen a definite marketed sort of growth in the last month. We're on to 25k subscribers. Our goal was 40,000. But we want this to be our full-time job, so we can dedicate more time to Turn Left. We can spend far more time on improving the quality of our content, doing more ambitious content, and more regular content. But I want to thank everyone who participated tonight. I'm Curtis Daly, and I will see you next time.
Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn Left.